Family Start program to lose, what is that word there, Chewy? Frontline staff.
But Pat,
Yeah, Chewy.
I thought we were just losing the people that just sit in the back room and
Yeah.
shuffle papers for money. Those leechers, I thought we were getting rid of those people.
Nelson-based
Never the
organisation
front
that
line.
supports the most vulnerable tamariki and their whānau across the top of the South Island is set to lose almost 40% of its frontline staff as Oranga Tamariki reduces its funding. We're not going to look into this story too much, but I wanted to make that clear because the story we are going to look at has got kind of twofold. Karen Chhour is unapologetic and under fire over program cuts and Oranga Tamariki changes. A couple of stories here that kind of dovetail into each other. We are going to get to Karen's tears, the tears of a Karen, and have a chat about that because the opposition is starting to say maybe you're not up to it. But there's a really important sentence in the story that I want to get to. And it has to do with frontline staff, Joey. Children's Minister Karen Chhour was unapologetic as she confirmed contracts with frontline providers would cut, accusing some charities of wasting taxpayer money. She said money would be redistributed to other, more worthy frontline services.
Pat, can I read between the lines there?
Please do.
Māori providers, get out.
And the reason I wanted to highlight, I'm going to read some more, but I wanted to highlight that sentence is the now government was not saying before the election, we will redistribute money to more worthy frontline services. They were saying very clearly, we won't be touching frontline services. This is completely contrary to what they promised. Like I'm not saying this like you should be surprised, but I'm pointing it out so we know, right? Remember? Election, pre-election, post-election, frontline won't be touched. What are they saying now? Well, more worthy frontline services won't be touched. Less worthy we might get rid of. It's not what they were saying. Oranga Tamariki also confirmed on Wednesday that it would be contracting fewer frontline community organisations and was budgeting about $100 million less for those services in the year ahead. The minister had been under fire from Oranga Tamariki's staff, its community partners and Māori over the changes she has been pushing for at the ministry. And this week, Starship Hospital, the country's top medical facility for children, joined the chorus of critics. When you've got Starship coming at you, you are growing to the level of superhero villain if Starship is ready to have a crack. But Chhour isn't backing down. On Wednesday, she accused some charities of treating Oranga Tamariki as a cash cow, confirming contracts would be cut, and went on to dismiss concerns that Māori children would be put in harm when treaty obligations are removed from Oranga Tamariki Act. This is actually a really good, you can see I'm scrolling for people to see. It's a really good article. You should go and read it. It's on Stuff at the moment. But I just want to put these out there and then I'm going to play some video. Chhour is pushing through a trio of controversial changes at Oranga Tamariki. These include a restructure of Oranga Tamariki's staff and the contracts it has with community providers, the repeal of 7AA of the Oranga Tamariki Act, which imposes treaty obligations on the ministry, and the introduction of a military-style boot camp pilot for teenagers deemed to be, quote, serious young offenders. Tangent, 10-second tangent. Did you read today? I know I read today, I think it was in the Herald, that there's going to be no Defence Force involved with these boot camps now?
I'm not surprised by that at all. The Defence Force don't want to touch us with fucking barge poles.
So, but hang on, that means if they're going to have a boot camp and it's not going to be the Defence Force, it must be Les Mills people, because they're the only two people who have boot camps. It's either the Defence Force or Les Mills. No one else has boot camps, do they?
Well, here's their opportunity to rebrand this into a spin class for serious offenders.
So let's play most of this story, and I wanted to play it because love him or hate him, you'll always know what Winston Peters is thinking. One of the things, now, I don't think this is the thing that's upset Karen Chhour the most, but it's obviously a tipping point for her, being called a puppet for the ACT Party. Now, I understand that could be hurting and frustrating, but it's pretty tame when it comes into the world of politics. Let's have a listen, and then you have a look what old Winston, who's one of her colleagues, has to say about being called a puppet.
She says she complained to the Speaker about this from Te Pāti Māori's Maria Meno Kapakingi.
Kua kare tauhia e tō pāti.
Calling her a puppet of her party and never got an apology.
I asked for an apology, that's all I wanted, and I didn't get one.
Now, look, I don't want to be seen as a misogynist beating up on a frail woman or a woman in crisis, but does that look the kind of response that you would expect from someone being called a puppet? That's why I'm saying perhaps it's the straw rather than that particularly. But I don't know, but it seems a very, very large reaction to quite a minor insult. Unless, maybe she's got something in her past where she's been called puppets before and it was really offensive to her. But I suspect it's more than just this. And I suspect that's why the Labour Party are now saying, you're not up to this job.
And that is so disrespectful.
A puppet for your party? Well, that's not the worst allegation. There have been far worse types of behaviour towards her.
So Winston's like, what? Yeah, okay, whatever.
It's just a damn disgrace.
Not last night, this morning. I made it very clear to the team this morning after the story last night, in response to that story last night, that I don't want us to be engaging in that debate at all.
I think that all of us in our politics need to be careful to keep the focus on the policy and the issue, not the person.
Today, the Minister was interviewed by Stuff's Chhour podcast and implied she'd been intimidated in hallways.
So someone has intimidated you in the halls of Parliament?
I'm not going into specifics.
Okay.
I made my stand yesterday. I had my say.
But when, as she wished, the interview turned away from personal towards policy, the Minister went from teary to terse.
Will they be physically disciplined?
Of course not. They're not going to be physically
Will they be
disciplined.
yelled at?
Of course they're not going to be
Will
yelled
they be,
at and
will they be
physically
put
disciplined.
into will they be put
These
into
questions
isolation?
are actually quite revolting.
Will they be put into isolation?
We covered this last week, obviously.
They're not, though. They're not revolting.
No. Because this is the same week that the legislation just came out around the abuse and care, and this is what was happening with the abuse and care. So yeah, maybe
we did talk about this a little last week, but I've thought a little bit more about it. Right, so
yeah.
It's a series of questions to really catch her out. Like, will they be physically disciplined? That's an easy one to say. Well, no, they're not. Will they be yelled at? That's an absolutely different thing. And I think for her to say, well, no, of course they won't, that's disgusting, shows she has no idea what's going on at this sort of thing. They will absolutely get yelled at. 100%.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not saying like verbally berated or that sort of thing. You yell at people, pick your feet up, run faster.
Yeah.
All of these sort of things. Like, I got yelled at Scouts.
Yeah.
That's not the
teachers
end of the fucking
students
world,
sometimes.
right? But for her to go, absolutely not, they won't be yelled at, and I'm disgusted at this question. That's just false.
Yeah, and like I said, remember, this is the day or 2 days after the abuse and care inquiry came out, and far worse than that was happening. So these are completely valid questions to be asking about the new in care program that our government, which happens to be them, is setting up.
Revolting.
Will they be put into isolation?
To make those assumptions.
Concerns raised in the Royal Commission. Will they be put into isolation?
No wonder people are getting so traumatised, because people like yourself are actually making implications that are actually really revolting.
Labour leader Chris Hipkins piling in, saying she was not up to her job.
I think it is clear that Karen Chhour's not coping as a minister, and I think that's very different to issues around her ethnicity or her past experience of abuse in state care.
Karen is no victim, she's a survivor. I'm talking to her a couple of times a day, and I believe that she's totally up for the job. What she's not up for is the personalised abuse about her race and her background.
Do you believe she is not?
So, puppet. I mean, that's what we've basically heard so far, Again, I'm not a vulnerable person. Mind you, she's the Minister of the Crown. She has privilege that doesn't make her vulnerable. Other areas in her life, obviously, from where she's come from, she is vulnerable. So, I guess looking at it through my eyes, I'm like, that wouldn't offend me, but then I'm not her. It just seems like a big reaction if it's just about being called a puppet.
Not fit to be a minister.
She's clearly not doing a good job.
I think the fact that people are suggesting that a woman in the workplace who's been a victim of that kind of abuse and harassment should actually get out of the way is frankly despicable. And that's why I'm actually fired up about this.
The Speaker shielding the Minister from interjections today.
This is very interesting. So the Speaker for 2 days has stopped anyone in the House objecting to Karen Chhour.
Demanding her answers in particular be heard in silence.
It's not a permanent thing. It's for now, because I think there does need to be a slight cultural reset in the place.
Saying Parliament must change the same day the Privileges Committee ruled this from Julianne Genter in May.
Ms Genter
amounted to a contempt of Parliament. She's done de-escalation training but hasn't lost any of her Green Party roles.
Fully cooperating with the Privileges Committee, with the internal disciplinary process, taking ownership of my actions and ensuring that my behaviour is better in the future. The call on what portfolios are held by who is one for our entire caucus to make. It's not really for me to decide.
De-escalation across the House, maybe just what the Speaker orders.
So there you go, Chewy.
So can I clarify there, because that story I got a little bit cross-eyed. So Karen Chhour gets up and says her bit, and nobody can object to that. But it's for 2 days. He said for today and tomorrow. Just her.
Yeah.
Just her.
Yeah.
So it's not across the board, which would make more sense. Yeah, that's not how I read it either. Oh, right. Okay, so that's weird. That's very, very strange.
I'm just scrolling through the text as well. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. That's how I read it at least. But
and wasn't it amazing to see it absolutely very clearly fired up David Seymour?
Just talking like this.
The raw emotion, the passion that you could see in that man. Wow. Just very, very powerful stuff about how fired up he was.
She does look well out of her depth. Now, I'm not, because when these sorts of things happen to people like Marama or Jacinda or Kerry Allen or, we were like unacceptable. A toxic workplace is unacceptable, right? There is also a line, like I was having a conversation with someone today about someone that we both know. And the person that we both know misreads situations a lot. So they see a situation as being very harmful to them and there's really nothing in it. Now, you can have a toxic workplace that feels toxic and that means it is to you. But you can also have a thing where it can be not as harsh as one is interpreting it. I feel maybe a vulnerable or have a certain constitution about you as well. And the more I see her professional work, and it's got nothing to do with her as a person, the more I think, are you cut out for this job? I mean, I don't like thinking that let's just be realist. I don't like saying that, Parliament, government is a blood sport, but it is. Should it be? No, but it is. That means if you can't play it, what happens? Let's just be real for a second. That's what it is. Either the whole culture changes, and look, put my hands up. I would vote for the whole culture to change. But at the moment, it's not. It's a blood sport. And if you can't handle the blood sport, either make the change or you need to move on because it won't be good for you. I mean, that sounds real harsh and probably a little bit misogynistic, but I guess I'm saying it for everybody because I'm just trying to be real. It's the reality of life.
I've been very clear, I think, in the past that I would like to see people be authentic and show their passion for something in Parliament. And I think when we covered this Karen Chhour thing, what was it, last week that it really kicked off, or earlier this week? Time has no meaning. My attitude towards Karen changed between the two stories.
Right.
That was clearly someone having an emotional crisis moment in front of the camera, and then she went on Tova, and my attitude changed. I have no doubt that Parliament is a tough place. I have no doubt that environment can breed an incredibly toxic environment. And we've seen that through the comments of staffers and volunteers and right up to MPs.
Yep.
And I think you're going to get that when there is such an ideological difference between positions, when we're talking about such emotive topics.
Yep.
And when you have the type of personality that has got to that stage, you have to have a very tough skin. Go on any politician's social media page. Doesn't matter what it's about, and read the comments, either side, left or right. they could be opening the local school's fucking cake sale, and someone will still be in the comments there saying some of the most hateful shit, especially if that person is a woman.
And especially a brown woman.
Especially
above that.
if that person is a brown woman.
Yeah.
You know,
Look, let me say this. Let me be clear. Toxic workplaces are, I think you can have both of these. A toxic workplace is unacceptable, and some people aren't up to being ministers.
Yeah.
Is this a case of both might be true?
Those two things exist in the same space.
Yeah.
And I think we're on the same page here about this, Pat. I do not think that Karen Chhour is doing a good job. I think the policies that she's rolling out fly right in the face of all the evidence about abuse in state care and whether feeding children, taking kids away from their culture and feeding them into the machinery of the state is good for them or good for society as a whole. Yeah. She hasn't learned that lesson. And I said this, you know, when we were talking about this previously, I think that comes down to, on her part, luck. She was lucky in her experiences because she didn't write out a report for the Crown Commission, I assume.
Yeah.
You know, and I would want to see that someone that has gone through that machinery to come out a more empathetic person. I don't think she has.
Tracy says it is a blood sport that tends to favour the right, though, Pat. Well, this is true. This is what we've been saying as well. The idea that when the left last lot were talking about this kind of thing, mostly what we heard from the right was, no, it's not that bad. Whereas now that someone on the right is like, unacceptable, this is wrong, this must stop. So yeah, they look at the left differently than the right. Paula says that she didn't call her a puppet. Paula, why don't you just, because that's obviously the Māori that was spoken, the te reo that was spoken. I don't know if you put in the messages, Paula, what she did actually say, but if you can do that now, then we'll keep an eye on it and see what she did actually say. Paula also says, not just weird, but also evidence she's not up to the job. There you go. Yeah, I think that's what it is. I think that a toxic workplace is completely inappropriate, wrong, should be wrong for everybody, but you can be the victim of a toxic workplace, which is not okay, and you can still not be up to the job as well. So it's not the toxicity that's causing you to fall short. You can fall short even if you had a lovely work environment. You still might fall short. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Like, I mean, even the contrast between, say, how Kerry Allen was treated and how, who was that national leader who was there for all of about 5 minutes? Was it Muller?
I was going to say the bald guy. They're all bald. Yeah, Muller.
Yeah, the bald guy in the blue suit who was elevated above the station. Oh, yeah, that doesn't narrow it down at all.
You know why you know why he failed? He wasn't the CEO of New Zealand. That's why he failed.
Yeah, true. Yeah, when that happened, the reaction from the left wasn't crowing and pointing and laughing and going, look at that fucking mediocre guy, he's not up to it. It was more taking a knee and let's acknowledge that it's a tough time and a tough job. You know, there is a difference there.
Yeah.
Paula has your answer.
Given us answer. So what she said was, you have been puppeted by your party. She's calling out the party's behaviour.
So that does change it, doesn't it? Because it's a lot less personalized at that point.